Hey everybody, Bobby Medina here with another really interesting interview and product review coming up for you. I'm here with my very good friend, the great Paul Baron, and we're here with a couple other great friends. And first of all, I'm going to introduce a wonderful trumpeter. He originally moved from Detroit, Michigan to New York City back in '89 to join Vince Giordano's Nighthawks. And he's been enjoying performing and recording with a lot of people. Too many to note right now, but I'll name a few names. I mean, Dick Hyman, Linda Ronstadt, Elvis Costello, Leon Redbone, Wycliffe Gordon, and the list goes on and on. He's performed with Wynton Marsalis, celebrating Louis Armstrong's Hot Fives and Sevens. He's leads a group called the Irregulars with EAR spelling, and he's been all over the place playing festivals like the Detroit Jazz Festival and the Moab Music Fest, and concerts all over the world. So he's at home in New York City, and he's been leading his Irregulars there for a long time. And interestingly, he can be heard on several television and movie soundtracks, including Ghost World, The Aviator, Bessie with Vince Giordano's Nighthawks, and upcoming soon, I think, some episodes of The Marvelous
Mrs. Maisel.
Maisel, that's right. Thank you.
Yep.
And something that I'm really interested in seeing, I haven't seen it yet, but this group was part of the HBO series Boardwalk Empire, for which the Nighthawks won a Grammy. So I think that's cool. And he's on well over 100 recordings, including 3 CDs as a leader on the Arbors label, and 3 with the great Ruby Braff. So we want to just welcome Jon-Erik Kellso here with us today. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. And we are going to let you introduce your business partner here, Frank Huber.
Well, I don't have a cheat sheet like you do. No, I mean, I don't know as much about Frank's background as you just quoted. Although we got to know each other originally through a gig that we were both doing with Vince Giordano, which was a big deal recreation of the Paul Whiteman concert from way back when the Rhapsody in Blue was debuted, and we did that at what was the place in
the 92nd Street Y, I think.
Oh, was that it? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Around the same time. At any rate, we had Vince Giordano's Nighthawks, which is an 11-piece 20s and 30s style band, jazz group, and then but we also had a classical conductor and a soloist, piano soloist, and added more pieces to the group to do some of these things like Concerto in F and Rhapsody in Blue. And so we had to get some classical ringers in there, and so that's where Frank came in. He came in to be the to make the 2-trumpet section, a 3-trumpet section, and handle some of the heavy lifting and all that. And that's how we met a few years back. And then we just kind of recently reconnected through our interest in mutes. And I was curious, hearing great things about these mutes that he's making, and with a 3D printer, and I was fascinated and I wanted to get some. And so we got onto the subject of mutes and started collaborating, whereas I had some mute ideas for him, and one in particular that has kind of panned out, and we're having fun with that. So he could tell you a little bit more about his own musical background. I know he's a heavyweight, but I'm not sure of all the details for you.
Well, since we're here to talk about the mutes today, and I have this one handy here. I wanted to ask you, John, I know of your playing, and you're so immersed and so great at that style of music, the 20s, 30s. I'm sure any style you play is wonderful, but I know you from there. And as a matter of fact, I've been hearing of your name for about 15 years. Tim Jensen, do you remember his name?
Gosh. Yeah, we go way back. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what
Detroit
he said.
days.
He
Yeah.
says to say hello, by the way. Tim
All right.
is a wonderful reed player that I toured with on a couple different shows. And anyway, he talked about your style and just your love of that era of music. So I'm wondering how you and Frank, well, first of all, how you decided on which mute that you really wanted to develop further in, you know, in the 21st century, and how that translated into working with Frank, and how you came to this mute that plays really, really well in tune, and the sound is fantastic. If anybody out there is interested in trying it, please do. You'll be
It's
knocked
called
out.
the Kellso Pixie by Huber Music here in New York City.
And you'll be knocked out with the intonation. It's amazing. So, which is so unusual for the mutes of that period, right, John? So anyway, you jump in.
True. Should I go or?
Yeah, please, John.
Okay. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
so I was talking with Frank about some of the things he was doing with these 3D printed versions of these hard to find and great old mutes, which seems like such a great idea because, you know, some of us are willing to spend years, you know, searching eBay and you know, old music stores to find old mutes, but some people aren't really that insane or obsessive compulsive. So it's really neat that you can get something that's like a version of the, you know, the solo tone mutes, or the old solo tone mutes, or this and that. And so I was saying that I have this mute that I use as my Pixie mute underneath the plunger for older style plunger playing, like the guys did in the early days, like in the 20s and 30s, Bubber, Miley, Cootie Williams, King Oliver. And the one that I use is kind of, I call it my nipple mute, and you know, the old one. And this is what it looks like, you know, and it's
Now, where was that one made? Do you have an idea where that one comes from?
It's a good question. There's no markings on it. I've got a couple of them. Apparently King used to include these in the case with horns in the very early days, with trumpets and maybe with cornets as well. And as a lot of, like, Kahn used to do that with their doorknob mute, you know, which is a little bit shorter, stubbier thing, which is the same shape as the Pixie mutes that Humes and Berg makes. And that's supposed to be a copy basically of the Kahn doorknob mute, and it's not a great copy. It's good. They're okay, and as anybody who's played on those knows, they're kind of stuffy.
Oh yeah,
they're pitchy.
Uneven.
They're pitchy. There's no low register. All the low notes are cut out.
Right.
So you know, I was getting, you know, I've been into this older style of music for a long time, and I was always just looking for old mutes and different ways to, you know, to get those sounds that I was hearing on the records. And I found this in what was it, Dylan Music in New Jersey. I said, hey, do you have any old mutes? And he said, oh, what do you mean old? You mean like old? I said, yeah, old. And he brought out a box of old mutes, and this was in there, and I was just trying out stuff, and went, oh man, I bet that would work good with the plunger. And lo and behold, it did. So and what I found was I could play all the way down to the bottom of the horn with it, and you know, it's really good. And so that's why I suggested to Frank, I said, hey, you know, these are really hard to find, and so much better than anything that I know of that's on the market today, as far as a Pixie mute to use with a plunger. So, and then he went into action and tried various prototypes and messed around with different densities of plastics to try and get to come to this conclusion, which is great, because it's not easy to make a copy of a metal mute.
I can imagine. So I'm curious, how do you measure something like that, Frank? I mean, how does that begin? Or is that if that's a trade secret, you don't have to tell us, but I mean, is it exactly the same as that? Or you've made some modifications, I take to that, right?
Yeah, so for the metal to plastic, I'm trying to think, John, you have at least what, 4 or 5 prototypes sitting at the house, not including the final product, right? So yeah, so some of it was like you can do what's called infill with the printing, where it basically prints plastic walls and then prints in the middle of it, and you can change the density and how much plastic's between those 2 walls. So a lot of it was just trial and error to figure out, you know, how to get that sound just right. I think the initial few prototypes we did of those were just like exact copies. And after that, we started tweaking some of the tube lengths on the inside of the mute and everything else. So, and that was kind of like that dialing in point to get that plastic mute to sound just like the metal, or as close as we can to the metal, without using actual brass. I think those are made of brass and they're silver plated. Am I yours?
I guess so. Yeah.
I don't think they're aluminum. They wouldn't have used aluminum back then.
No, it's a little heavier, you know.
And it
Yeah.
could be nickel plating back in those days too.
Mhm.
So did you
Some
find
of them have gold plating on, like this one, I think, actually
Oh yeah.
gold plated here.
You know,
so-
craftsmanship back in those days was on a whole other level, wasn't it? You know, I mean, just everything was so labor intensive and just really done in a way that we practically never see these days, unfortunately, because of cost. But what I'll say is, like, I've played a number of Pixie Mutes, you know, Paul and I mean, Paul's done more shows, I'm sure, than I have, but I've had my fair share of shows, and the ones that I've used have sucked overall, if I could use one word to say about them. I normally hate playing with them, but when I put this in and started working with it, it was just a really pleasant surprise. I mean, it's just nice and even comparatively, you know, and all the way down to the bottom. Plus, I think it just looks really cool having it in black and white and with this little stem on the end of it. It's just extra nice. I mean, you guys have really done a nice job developing it.
So John, can you give us an A/B demonstration going
Sure.
between
So
the two?
I'll give you a little, first I'll play just a note or two to show you where I'm at intonation wise, and then I'll put the
Sure.
old one and then the newer one and all that. I'll do some comparison. Oh, this is my old, or not old, but fairly new pudgy trumpet, which is another odd looking thing. Huh?
Wow.
That's made out in Oregon. Okay, so first notes of the day. All right, I'm good. So it's,
Wow.
you know, it's not, this is the, you know, the original old one.
Yep.
So you actually have a low register with that. And then using it with a plunger, I kind of prefer these sort of medium sized ones. It's almost as small as those small sync plungers, but I found one
Like that one, yeah.
in between, yeah. And I have the hole drilled out, but I have a coin in there that I flip, which is kind of like the idea that Kenny Rampton also uses with his indigo.
I was at a clinic with Clark Terry as a kid in high school, and I remember him saying, make sure you drill that thing out and stick a nickel in it, he used to say.
That might be where I got the idea from. I can't remember. So that's you know, yeah. But I like it more closed with the Pixie and more open without the Pixie. So
okay,
it just works that way. All right, so we've got so that's with the old original nipple mute, as I call it. So this is with the Frank Huber Kellso Pixie Mute. So
very cool. I mean, I gotta say, you know, we all, I think, have to, I think we all have to tip our hat to you, John, because your playing is stellar. I mean, I've seen some videos of you where you're just playing in this style. and it's really, really fantastic.
Oh.
You know, I think right now, kind of maybe the Zoom thing doesn't give this sound, right, Paul? I don't think it gives it the justice that it really deserves, because I mean, it sounds fine. Don't get me wrong, but to hear it live, it sounds better than it being coming through a tiny little speaker, you know, and being recorded through maybe a smaller speaker or something as well.
So, Frank, I have a question, and again, maybe this is another thing you can't disclose, but I noticed the length of them are a little different, you know, and obviously the thickness. Now, did you have to, excuse me, did you have to make the plastic thicker because it's plastic, or, you know, they're almost the same length, but it's a little longer, it seems like, with yours.
Yes.
Is that because of pitch issues? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
that was actually that was like kind of like a last minute addition. Actually, I think that John kind of, I think you had that idea of lengthening it just to kind of get those low register notes to really lock in, because as good as the old one was, it was a little bit, it's not I won't say squirrely, because they're not squirrely, but they didn't lock in quite as well as they could have. And I remember John saying he actually you have a few other Pixies that are even longer than that, am I right? Like they're
I have some other oddball old metal, you know, no name mutes that are similar, that were similar but even longer, and they were really good as well for the low notes. And so it seemed to me that something about this longer kind of mute that goes further into the bell that helps with the low range and helps with the tuning. So
so it's kind of a mashup of a couple different mutes. And then as to the thickness, it's part structural and part for the sound. So it's just finding a balance between the two, where it's, you know, it's going to be strong enough you don't have to worry about anything, but still get you the sound that you want. So that was, again, a bit of trial and error. I think by the time I got along to doing the Pixies, I had a lot of that trial and error worked out with the plastic thickness, though, from the other ones that I've worked on.
Now, were there like fiber mutes back in the day that were decent, you know, like a Little Pixie, or were they all pretty much metal back then?
Well, most were metal, but there was a Shastock actually made a Pixie for a while, and I have a few of those. I don't know if I could it would take me a minute to find it because everything's kind of a mess right now.
I actually have Josh Wagner restoring one of those for me, one of the fiber Pixies from Shastock. So,
and they're pretty good. They're not as good as these, as far like they still kind of cut off the low range, like most, you know, like most Pixies and a lot of mutes in general do. But they have a pretty good sound, and they're all right. You know, I still would say this is a better overall mute, but yeah.
Have you used this particular mute on any of these recording sessions that you've been doing, especially like the ones that are for the television shows or the movies or whatever soundtracks?
Well, you know, I have used it on some recordings, and just recently, but they're not on anything that's out yet, you know, because this is still pretty new.
Yeah, it's brand new. So everybody here is just starting to get, you know, you're getting in on something on the ground level of this thing. This is one of the latest, coolest innovations here that I think we have. I mean, there's not many people that really deal in this kind of equipment from that, you know, mutes from that era. And that, I think that's kind of partially what just makes it so cool, you know?
So, Frank, were you always interested in making, you know, different mutes, or was this all coming out of a conversation between you and John?
So originally, this all started out as a kind of a COVID thing, where, you know, all my gigs got canceled. I've always wanted to get into 3D printing, so it was one of those. I taught myself all the Fusion 360, the CAD programming for that, the printers, and then it started out with, you know, some of the other. I have a large mute collection above me that you guys can't see, but you know, a few vintage mutes that I like using, but don't like taking on gigs for obvious reasons. They get damaged, they get stolen. So I just kind of sat down. I was like, oh, let's start messing around with these and see if I like them. And I sent them out to a few friends just for them to try out. And they, you know, I'm trying to think. I think it was a buddy of mine, Ryan Reske, threw a thing online, saying, you know, like, kind of put a post up on Facebook, and I started getting people asking about them. So that's how this kind of started. And then, yeah, this is stuff with John came about with another mute I was working on, and I've always had an affinity for, you know, vintage horns and vintage mutes. So this is just a way to get that sound without having to bring the actual vintage equipment on gigs that you might be worried about.
This was now I remember, this was what he was asking me about. You know, he had heard through the mute nerd grapevine that I had a Shastock Mega Mute, which is this big, huge, you know, megaphone looking mute. And this is the Huber version. I don't have the Shastock one is the other room, I think. But he had asked me about that if I had one. So we started talking about those, and he ended up borrowing mine to get the, you know, and to get the measurements right. And, you know, he gave me one of the prototypes, and I helped him a little bit with getting the dimensions and the sound. And man, he nailed it with this Mega Mute, because that's something, you know, they're really hard to come by. And
yeah, that's something I've actually never played on. Have you played on a Mega Mute, Paul?
No.
Why don't you give us a little sound? Can you give us a little sound of that? Let's show us how that sounds.
Yeah, this is something, yeah, most people have not even heard of this. Even mute geeks don't necessarily know this one. That was more operator error than mute.
Very nice, though. It's a cool sounding mute. You know, one of the things that we have here, you know, the site is Tips for Trumpeters 50 and Beyond. And so I think it would be really cool if you could maybe share a little, maybe some of your thoughts on how you've practiced and you've developed your mute playing, because you have such a unique sound with it. And also the other thing I think is so cool is your vibrato. It's so that era, but it's so you at the same time. How did you develop that? Give us a little insight into that.
I'd say that in my case, you know, I really got interested in this music right when I started playing the trumpet at age 10. And my dad had been a trumpet player. I found out after telling him that I wanted to play the trumpet. And he got out his old Martin, and that became my first horn. So that was a pretty good start. And
cool.
you know, his heroes were Bunny Berrigan and Harry James and Louis Armstrong. So he had those kind of records around in the house. And rather than being the rebellious kid who was trying to find music that his parents didn't like, I loved the music that my parents liked and had, you know, so I was listening to these records, and then I was finding Duke Ellington records and hearing Cootie Williams, and I was like, wow, you know, I was just thrilled with this stuff. So I just immersed myself in listening to this music from a very early age, you know, and you know, started riding my bike around to antique shops to look for 78 RPM records. That's, you know, and that's a pretty weird for a kid in the 70s to be doing this, you know. But at any rate, you know, I was studying trumpet along the way, like most people do, just with regular trumpet teachers. But at the same time, I was teaching myself a lot just by immersing myself in listening to these records, and then gradually going to hear the best players around Detroit, where I grew up, to hear the music live, and then, you know, pull on their shirt tails on the breaks and ask questions of the older players, and kind of became part of the scene eventually because I was showing an interest and all that. And so I had some great mentors around Detroit, and just listening to the records and really just trying to imitate stuff. I would just, you know, I wanted to be able to sound like Cootie Williams. So I'd listen to the records over and over, and then I'd experiment. And then finally, you know, somebody explained to me that they were using a little mute with the plunger, because I kept thinking, like, why can't I get that sound like they got, you know, like this is not the same thing, you know. But and then I was like, oh, and that really, for me, that opened up a whole palette of colors that I wasn't able to get with just the plunger. Once I started using some different kinds of pixie mutes that I, you know, found here and there, and I started looking for the old ones, because I had some good advice from some older players that, like, the commonly available stone line was okay, but if you can find one of these old kind of ancestors of that, you'll probably have better luck. So at any rate, I just started experimenting with it and messing around with it. And like I said, I had some good teachers. I had one teacher who had played with Jimmy Lunsford, and
wow, that goes back.
That was kind of cool. Yeah, that's Billy Horner was his name. Not one of the better known players of the big band era, but he ended up kind of staying in Detroit mostly, but great player who was like Joe Wilder, kind of breaking some of the early color barriers and playing shows and playing in orchestras as a black guy in the early days, which was
very cool.
Very cool. He was just a super good player, kind of like a Wilmer Wise, Joe Wilder type of guy, who could do it all, sort of, So at any rate, I just, and so I was listening to records, and at first I started off with just a Harmon mute, like actually it was the Humsenberg red and white old wah-wah mute, My dad was like, oh, here's Sugar Blues by Clyde McCoy.
Right.
Like that wah-wah stuff. And he kind of showed me how to do that, and then I started messing around with the other stuff, listening to Cootie Williams. And one of the records that I liked a lot was Harlem. Oh, come on, my brain's going right now. There's Concerto for Cootie, and then there's Cootie's Concerto, which is also known as.
Yes, I forgot
Echoes
that.
of Harlem. Okay, just have a look at that. And that one kind of it's this tune. And so I just kept messing around with it until I was figuring out how he'd get these sounds. And there's rips, there's vibrato, there's growls, and I started to understand that there's a couple different ways to get the growl sound with you can kind of go like that, or just sort of hum indiscriminately along while you're playing. You can get different kinds of growls that way. And then the flutter tonguing growl, like for Bubber Miley, he did more of that, He kind of did that sort of a broader style with the flutter tongue, which gives us really intense growl.
So with the vibrato that you're getting from the Cootie thing, it's just a fast shaking of the horn, or are you including some lip vibrato as well?
I don't even think about it that much now, but yeah, I do. I guess I do use a lot more hand vibrato than a lot of modern day players use, and that was just kind of. And I like both types of vibrato, and I do use them both. But I guess I was just taught that a lot of the old guys.
Yeah. Well, there's a time and a place for everything. I'm just curious as to your technique.
You can really get you can really kind of control it very specifically. I find for me with the hand vibrato.
Yeah, the speed and the depth,
especially for a faster vibrato like they used in those days. And then if you're kind of doing some of that stuff where it goes into like a shake, of course, that kind of it makes sense to use that vibrato too, because so you're kind of sometimes going from a vibrato into a full-on shake, and combined with the growl, you can get some of those kind of Bubber Miley type effects.
Well, that's awesome, man. It sounds great. The mute sounds great. I know we're kind of rounding the bend here. We're just about out of time, but boy, the mute is incredible. again here. Why don't you tell them what your website is there, Frank, so we can do that. We'll make sure we note this in the bottom here under the description too, guys.
The website's F Huber Music. It's Huber. And yeah, it's the Mute's up there. Facebook page too, if you guys want to follow it with any updates. I know I try to post whenever John's playing any live stream gigs. I try posting on there because it's always great hearing him play. I was actually I think
what's the name of the Facebook page?
It's F Huber Music as well for the Facebook page. Yeah. So
it's very cool. I mean, you guys have done a stellar job. I think you guys, I mean, Paul and I have both played a lot of mutes. Boy, I think you guys knocked it out of the park with this. Highly recommend it. It's very good quality mute, and we'll make sure we post up all the details for you guys in the description below. Definitely check them out. Go over to the website. Highly recommend you try this out if you're into this kind of sound, into this kind of music, or if you're a show player. It's a great addition to your mute collection, right, Paul?
Yes, absolutely. And I hear that after COVID, there's going to be tons of gigs involving Little Pixie Mutes. That's the style coming out of that, you know? I mean, think about the Spanish.
Happy days are here again.
Absolutely. Yeah. Think of the Spanish flu coming out of that. You know, we had the 20s and 30s. There it is.
He also made a buzz version of the Pixie too. So let's see. Oh, there we go.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, very cool.
Well,
so if you can't growl, it'll growl for you, you know.
That's very cool.
Well, very cool. We'll have to do some more, another interview and a little bit more on all these mutes in the future.
Oh, I know. He's got a bunch of great.
I'd love to, man.
That would be a lot of fun. Great. Well, thanks, guys.
Thanks so much for being here, for being part of this, and for sharing your playing and your ideas to both of you. And lots of luck to you. We'll look forward to seeing you guys online, and keep us posted, John. Let us know when you're playing too on our site, and let us know, and Paul and I will help post it as well.
Thank you. Hey, I enjoyed your I don't know what to even call it, presentation the other day. I was digging it.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thanks. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, we got a really cool workshop coming up on Saturday. We're trying to get prepared for. So we're looking to help a lot of people in the future here and working with them. So thanks again, guys. We sure appreciate you being here.
Our pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
Cool. All right. I'll just have it fade out, and there we go. Wow. Thank you. John, I'm glad you went into the Bubber Miley thing too, because I was about to say, hey, can I put you on the spot and ask you to play a Cootie Williams, just play a lick as Cootie Williams and then play it as Bubber. Because I heard this story. I think Wayne Bergeron told me that he was on a session with Warren Looning, and it just on the music, it said, a la Louis Armstrong, and he was kind of a smart ass.
I think I know the story, but go ahead.
This is a great story.
Oh, so maybe Frank, if you
this one I don't know. Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Oh, okay. Well, so the question was then he says, so do you want that to be 1943 or 1947 Louis Armstrong? And they said, well, can you give us an example of each? And he did, and they were distinctively different and both amazingly great. But they went, oh yeah, we'll take this one. So I don't think I have the years quite right. Do you guys remember, Bobby and John?
No, I think it was I think it was like 30s and 40s or something like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think you said like early 30s versus something, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah,
general idea.
The way the story changed, it was like closer. Yeah. Do you want that March of 1941?
Yeah. Then that was the joke in the studios when they would go see him. They'd say, what time of day, AM or PM or something like that. Oh God.
Well, that's as stupid as that one story, and I won't take too long to tell it, but I was doing some dumbass jingle, and there were the three high-fiving white guys in the back, behind the Bobby, you know this story, but there's the engineer and the producer sitting at the board, and these three young white guys that are probably doing their very first ever ad campaign, and they're in their very first recording studio, and they're like, yeah, Skippy. Wow. Yeah, Biff. This is really cool, man. We got to order in sushi on the company's credit card, man. This is going to be so great. Anyway, so we're doing this session, and I lay down one little bit, and the composer, who's also a friend of mine, became a friend over the years, gets on the talk back, and he's kind of smirking with shit-eating grin, and he goes, "Hey, Paul, yeah, that sounded good, but just give us a minute. We need to talk about something for a second." And he turns around, he talks to the three high-fiving white guys, and I don't know what's going on behind the glass. And he turns back around, and he's got an even bigger shit-eating grin, and he goes, "Yeah, so we're thinking, it sounds a little bit too Chardonnay, and what we're really after is more Cabernet." And he's going, "You know what I mean?" And he's trying to, not bust out laughing. And I'm going, "Oh, you fucking idiot." And I'm trying not to laugh either. So I go, "Oh yeah, I think I know just what you're talking about. I have a mouthpiece for that." So I turn around and I reach into my gig bag and make some noise and take 20 seconds or something looking for a mouthpiece. And I pull out the same mouthpiece, put it back in my horn. I say, "Oh, let's try this. I think this might work." And so I play it, and then you see behind the producer, they're literally high-fiving, like, "Yeah, man, wasn't that a great idea? We're so fucking smart. Wow, let's order that sushi in now." I couldn't believe it. Chardonnay or Cabernet? Come on.
That's classic.
Isn't that crazy? That's just
I've
like the
had
ultimate
people
of
describe
stupid.
things in color. It needs a little more red, or make, blue. I can understand if they want it to be more bluesy, but when you start giving me gradient colors of red and orange and this and that, I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah.
But I got to remember the mouthpiece next time. Yeah, wait, I got a mouthpiece for that color.
Yeah. If it was a different producer or composer that I didn't know so well, I might not be able to, pull that off quite as well. But he had my back there, and he thought they were full of shit behind him too. So it worked out.
Cool.
And that makes me think of, I was just doing one of these Mrs. Maisel,
Yeah.
the marvelous Mrs. Maisel recording sessions for this new season that's coming up. And they're going to have the band, I guess, quite prominent in this season, where we're going to be on camera a bunch. And
are you in the Catskills or is it
I don't know yet. I think it's going to be Manhattan, because they're talking about us being a strip club band.
Oh, okay.
Apparently her career got really good, and now she's then it got really not good. I'm not caught up on this and watching the series myself, but I've only seen the first 4 episodes. But
gotta catch up, man.
But yeah, I know, I'm working on it.
Oh, it's a great series. Yeah.
No, it really is good. You'll enjoy it.
So apparently, she's now trying to rebuild, and she's going to this burlesque theater and just sort of using the house band, which is a jaded kind of scruffy strip club band, and doing this act with the strippers, but during the course of the season, apparently the band gets cleaned up and spruced up and gets their act together and becomes less jaded, and the whole thing becomes more of a class operation. But so for this first recording session, they were asking us to play not so well. They were saying, "Can you sound sloppier and miss some notes and go for the high note and miss it at the end?" And I'm thinking, actually, with the COVID chops the way they are right now,
that's perfect.
Missing the high note, I'm going to be great at missing this high note. Yeah, because I'm not
called the right guy.
I'm not exactly. Yeah, exactly. I'm not exactly the high note guy anyway to begin with. So he had these high E's and stuff up there. I was like, okay, I'll just go for it, and if I miss it, it'll be perfect.
That's what they wanted. Yeah.
They were like, "Man, that was great. That was perfect." I just splattered that high note. I'm like,
Yeah, I meant to do that.
I've been practicing to be able to do that just that way for you.
So are they going to clean you up and make you shave and, slick your hair back and stuff later, or what?
And we'll see. I don't know what they're going to do. I think, they asked for us to send pictures of ourselves looking like COVID scruffy, and so I had pictures where, it was sort of like, like this, and they're like, yeah, that's perfect. So
that's the guy.
So I don't know what they're going to do. I've got my first fitting with the wardrobe department coming up soon, and we'll see.
That's really great. Cool. I mean, that when you're on camera, it pays even more, right, than just recording. So that's the upside.
Yeah, it's like you get paid like an extra. It's not great. It's like $200 and something per 8 hour.
Oh, that's so. I had done a few of those. What the hell is
sidelining? They call it.
Yeah, sidelining. I've done a bunch of those.
Did they have? Are you locked in with 802 with that or no? With the union? Because I had done that other Amazon show with the conductor. I can't think of the name of it.
Jungle.
Yeah. Mozart in the Jungle, and they were paying us like $400 an episode for that. And we were miming along to a recording that they had because they were too cheap to pay U.S. orchestra to do the recording. So we were miming along to a recording from like Czechoslovakia.
Oh, well,
Amazon was too cheap to.
Well, we're going to be miming to our own recordings some of the time. So we get paid once to do the regular union scale recording session, and then it's like this kind of not great extra pay for the filming. But then they also said there might be a bunch of times where we're actually playing and on screen, and then that's kind of, you get paid both at once then, kind of. So then it ends up okay.
I remember somebody, I don't remember who it was now, talking about the Tonight Show band, and that the guys always loved whenever the camera even if it just waved by the band when they were playing, because they would get one scale if they were just playing, but as soon as they were on camera, it was like another. In addition, it was like another like $250 or $300 or something. Wow. That was back then, like we're talking 70s when I heard that,
And playing on screen, and they're using your audio. I did a really shitty movie years ago where I was like a Navy band guy, with the white uniform and all that stuff. Was it Tom Green? Was he a comedian? He was married to,
yeah. I know that.
Like he was married to Drew Barrymore or something for a minute. Yeah. Anyway, it was a terrible, terrible movie. But we got paid a shit ton of money in residuals because there was almost nobody. It was such a low budget. There was almost nobody with their hands in the pie. So when it came to divide it up, here's the music department portion. It was pretty damn good. And we were a band of 8 or something. So, to divide that up 8 ways, boy, it paid great. Whereas, awesome. Rocky IV, I was in the Russian band for that. And you see like a 100th of a second, the camera kind of does that. But we were there for 4 days straight, 14 hours a day, I think. And we made shit in residuals because it was so high budget and there's so many people with their hands in the pie that my little percentage, even if it was a huge, gazillion-dollar movie, was so minuscule. So it all depends on that. And I do know that like NBC, ABC, the big networks, their scale is different than Amazon and Netflix and all that too.
Amazon's got so much money. It's ridiculous right now. This COVID thing has just put them over the top, man. I mean, it's insane. Oh, yeah. But they're knocking out a ton of movies, man. I mean, it's like there's
and some good quality stuff too.
Yeah.
And Netflix and what's the other one?
Well, Amazon Prime and Netflix. Yeah, Hulu.
They're all doing really good stuff. Yeah.
So Paul, you and I got to get caught up on this stuff for the weekend. and I need to go use the bathroom, so I'm going to excuse myself from this call for just a few minutes. But guys, thanks you for both, being here with us. We'll make sure we get this up. I'll shoot you a message when we get it up. I mean, John, are you part of our site or part of our group, Frank? I know you're probably.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know why I didn't know that. We like when you got 2,000 people, it starts to get like.
You don't have a class list for just not checking us off every day?
No,
no one unfollowed you.
Well, it's usually the dickheads in the group that we know, not the normal people, not the people that can really play. Because I mean, unfortunately, the behind the scenes thing with it is there's just so many people that can't wait to jump in and give advice, and most of them, as you see, really don't know what they're talking about. Unfortunately.
That's like every Facebook group, and I mean Trumpet Herald, it's all like that. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and for that reason, this is why we've just said that we're not going to have, and we have people that have gotten mad at us now for taking down their, here's me squeaking out a double high C, here's me playing a Christmas carol and this and that. It's like, you know what, this is about tips, and this is about written content, not about you promoting yourself. Right. When we see something we think would be cool, then somebody of interest, or like this, a product, then we'll promote it because we can totally get behind it, and we think it would be beneficial to the group. But
no, it's good that you've got the focus, and you're keeping a focus to the group. And
I mean, we're trying to not be too Nazi about it, but
you look at the hindsights, the numbers and stuff. There's so many more hits when we do something like this. People are actually really engaged in it when they go to a page and they're just seeing, oh, here's another something. Then they just scroll through it and they're not really engaged in it very much. So we're finding, it's really been helpful. And it's been fun too, man.
Well, it's fun.
I'm learning so much. So
yeah.
Well, Bobby,
meeting guys like you, it's great.
You got to take a